You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
Hey guys, welcome back. You're listening to the second part of last week's episode. Let's jump back in.
Yeah. So what have you found to be the ways in which investors work most efficiently or effectively with their team in the Philippines, right? So there's logistical things, like there's a time difference. It's like whatever, you can kind of get over that or, get past it, or they work on your time zone or whatever, right? But then there's, are there communication issues? Are there sort of expectation issues? Like if you're consulting with an investor, they want to work with people in the Philippines, which, by the way, my experience has been very similar to yours. The people that I've met who are working in the States from working remotely for companies in the States, in the Philippines, have been almost universally like very hardworking, very diligent, excellent, like really well educated, very well trained. I mean, it's not like you're taking a step down in sophistication. They're very, very sophisticated in the kinds of work that they can do, but it is a different culture, right? It is different in some ways. So like, what do you kind of say to people if they're saying like, well, okay, I want to really do a good job, both for myself and for them. What are the ways in which I can make sure that happens? Yeah,
you got to make sure you put the virtual assistants. It's same as hiring here. You want to make sure that you put the right person in the right seat. So I found that, if you have, so we do disc profiling and predictive index, right? So we already do that. So we already have kind of a makeup. So when we have a client that wants certain tasks, that we already have a leg up against everybody else, because we're going to put the individual is strong. And if he's strong in communications, we're not going to probably put him in bookkeeping, because it's just a different kind of, if you want a bookkeeper, you're probably not going to have that same profile as someone you want to do communication on the phone and things like that. So that is very, very important. So if someone's looking at that, make sure you do disc profile. And I always say this, anyone could go hire a virtual assistant on their own, right? And I just say this all the time. We obviously have a lot of benefits working with us, but if you want to do it, I would do the same exact thing. You have to make sure and be careful, because you'll go through 100 applications and you go through probably 20, 30, 40 interviews only to get one to find out they're the wrong person. So make sure that you're very diligent in that, because I made that mistake myself. 2013, I went through a couple of them because I was my own worst enemy, because I didn't know all this stuff. Of course, how many 8+ years later, I kind of got it. I got it now. And that's why obviously with our company, we offer those things. But I think it's very, very important for you and every individual, when they're hiring here. I mean, you know that, right? Then if we're hiring here or in another country, it's the same. But just to answer your question as well, Filipino culture is customer service. There's a lot of call centers over there. They're exactly behind. So they work at night on our time. So you and I are East Coast Standard Time. I don't know. I have almost 20 virtual assistants working for us, and they work our time, and it's not a problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So I recently started working with a virtual assistant to kind of help me manage my stuff. And I'm always like, what time is it for you right now? And he's always like, oh, it's like 4 a.m. And I'm like, sorry, dude. Like I feel guilty about it. He's like, it's not a thing. I don't care.
It's a way of life. It's a way of life over there.
Totally. It's totally normal. But to me, I'm like, I can't stay up past 10 p.m. Eastern time. So, it hurts me. It hurts me in my bones. I'm going to ask you just real quick, we could take a quick detour. What has your experience been with predictive index? We also started using predictive index this year. It was kind of an experiment for us. I ended up doing way more hiring this year than I anticipated, and I used it a lot. But I also feel like I don't use it anywhere near to its fullest potential. And I know people who are very, very deep in predictive index. What's your take on it? How do you guys use it? Just give us a general overview of what your thoughts are.
Yeah, we have a lot of clients that want to see the reports, right? So when they're hiring virtual assistants, they want to see reports. So we give it to them. However they look at it, they look at it. So we use it in our office here too, predictive index, because if you want someone on the phone, you want someone like a captain or a maverick or whoever wants that type of person. We also are looking to hire a COO as well, and we're going through this predictive index. And you know what, for me personally, I know a lot of people that really dig into it and really take big stock in it. I look at it, in my opinion, when I'm hiring like a cold caller, I want them to have a certain kind of profile, or someone who's going to be on the communication side of it, certain kind of profile. So, again, like I said, everyone has a little bit different take on it. Some people dig into it really, really deep. Just like you said, you're probably just scratching the surface. And I stay on the surface with it because when we have clients come in, some of them, are surface, like, let's say us. And then some of them really, really dig in to say, all right, well, if your COG score is a certain number, I don't even want to look at it. Right. So,
right. Yeah. I think it's interesting, right? Like, it's something where it certainly seems to help direct a conversation, but I also, like me personally, I wouldn't want to shut someone out merely because they didn't do well on this particular test, right? But that, along with an interview, along with whatever, might help, I think.
It definitely helps. I 100% agree.
Okay, so I want to ask you a couple of different things. Yeah, I want to ask like 40 billion things, but I didn't time soon, and I don't want to keep it too long. So I want to ask, all right, let's go back a little bit. You started investing in 2004. I have been asking everybody on this show, this is about 13 interviews deep now, where I've asked this question every single week, and I want to ask you this question as well. What was 2008 like for you?
We actually knew it was coming. This is when I was partners with Pat. We were a year ahead of everybody. So we were doing short sales, and we pivoted. We kind of knew something was coming up. So we started doing short sales for other investors and real estate. So we kind of pivoted into a service base, also on the investor side. But once it pivoted, we were still profitable. What I mean by that, because what happened, it sucked. Don't get me wrong. We lost $250,000 in transactions because we were doing simultaneous closings at that time. And a lot of people don't know what that means, but we were using the end buyers funding to fund our deal out, and everyone got paid, and we got a nice check. So it was pretty cool. So did it affect us? 100%. What I wish I would have done, gone back, I wish in like 2010, we started buying property to all. Like, I wish, like, if you could get a crystal ball, that's what I would do. But on affecting us as a business, I think we were fortunate. Pat was a pretty smart dude. He was my mentor the whole time. So he kind of saw there was going to be a change in the market. So we did pivot before everybody else did. So that, for us, that was a huge saving grace.
And you said your takeaway from it was you wish you had started buying again earlier? Like when you said you wish you were buying in 2000?
So it was buy and sell. So we would always buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. But you look at some of the individuals that just sold out to maybe funds or whatever that had 200, 300, 400 doors. They just made a windfall. Like, we could have bought properties for 30, 40, 50 grand in Connecticut, New Britain, Waterbury. These properties are now 200 grand, right? Yeah. Maybe even more. So you look, of course, we could all say this. We could always look back. But so that's why I tell newer individuals, there's never a bad time to start. That's what I said. There's never a bad time to start buying, ever.
Want to find motivated seller leads online, but don't know where to start? Download our free Motivated Seller Keyword Report today. AdWords nerds have spent over $5 million this year researching the most profitable keywords for finding motivated seller leads. And you can grab these exact keywords when you download our report at www.adwordsnerds.com/keywords.
Well, I love that takeaway, because my follow-up to that question was, I think a lot of people right now, we're recording this at the end of 2022, right? I think a lot of people right now feel pretty uncertain. It's been a very weird back half of this year. Really, it's been a very weird 3 or 4 years. But I think people started to really feel anxiety about the market this year. I certainly see that in my business. When you look at the current situation today, do you see echoes of 2008? Like, how are you dealing with the market? Are you changing at all? Is it just full speed ahead? How do you view like our current situation?
So on the real estate side, I'm doubling down. We're going harder. We're spending more money, and we're driving more leads. I like it because there's less competition.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you look at it and you say, if you're a knowledgeable investor, you do things right. You build the right team, right? If you're only, and here's where I look at it. If you're only wholesaling, just wholesaling, start changing your process. You might have to start rehabbing a little bit. The reason why I say that, because back in 2009, 2010, if everyone does it, you could do these statistics online. The stuff that was selling, a lot of people don't know this, they're buying REOs, but they're getting bought up by investors, rehabbing them, then they would sell because people didn't have money at that time because they were unlocking their HELOCs prior to that, but they didn't have money to fix up and resell. So if you look at that same thing that's happening, there's still people that need housing. There's still a lack of inventory. Connecticut, there's a lack of inventory. There's not a ton of land in Connecticut. There isn't, right? A lot of steps, especially if you want to stay near Hartford, where are you going to go? Right? You're not going to, if you want to, live near Hartford, you're not going to move out to like New Hartford, or Winston, or it's a little far away. So
any one of them
look at the
towns in Connecticut that nobody knows unless you're from here, but are very nice, but are very far away from everything. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So that's what I see in the market. People are still buying, we're selling. The most eyeballs out there are obviously, you're going to find more buyers on the MLS. If you have the opportunity to sell your properties there, then that's what I would recommend, because that's where majority of buyers are. A lot of wholesalers, or rehabbers, I should say, wholesalers are getting beat up because they don't have enough buyers. They're not selling them in the right channels. So as a wholesaler, you have to find those right channels to sell. And those are retail buyers. You want to make money, you got to figure out how to get those properties into retail hands.
Yeah, I do. I'm really glad that you said the whole thing about competition, because I do think there is, there's certainly some market correction happening. I think there was a pretty significant gap still is between what sellers expected to get and what buyers were willing to pay, right? And there's that gap sort of created a lot of uncertainty. But as you said, the underlying situation of the housing market, what's available, the amount of inventory, all these things, isn't that different now than it was when there was much higher competition, right? And in many ways, all great investment decisions hinge on you know something that the rest of the market doesn't, or the rest of the market is just making the wrong decision because it's primarily emotional and you're making a more rational decision, right? So I'm not saying that everybody needs to step up or stay in the market if they're uncomfortable with it, but I am saying I think there's a lot of room for that strategy to make a lot of hay, particularly when people pull back. So I'm really glad that you said that.
Hey, let me just add 2 seconds. I know we're running out of time, please. But and I'll answer it as a service provider too, right? So I'll answer it so I see some individuals, right, that they start looking at the numbers, and let's go with it. We're in holiday season. Yeah, holiday season is different than not holiday season. So you and I have a unique view on what we see, right? Once January comes, all of a sudden, boom, your leads start going through the roof again. You also had an election in November. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So the way I see it, if I look at it as a service provider, you know what? You're typically, I love it, because I use my service and I'm adding more virtual assistants because I'm driving more leads. So I can look at it on 2 different sides of it. So for me, I'm happy on both sides of it because I know what happens when you have less. You may lose a couple clients, right? Both of us may lose a couple clients, but in the end, you're going to gain more because those individuals, the masterminds we're part of, I know you have a phenomenal mastermind, right? The masterminds you're part of, those individuals have been in business for a long time. And the longer you've been in business, you understand that you've got to stay consistent. You got to stay, because once you stop doing those, the leads stop coming. So kind of interesting.
If you wait till, let's say, January, February, March, whenever it is, when lead volume starts to come back, and then you try to put everything in place, you find yourself significantly behind the people that just stayed consistent in the first place, right?
Agreed.
So there's a bit of I'm going to throw 2 curveballs at you. We'll see how you feel about it. And we could take it or leave it. I'm very curious what you see, if any, as the interaction between virtual assistants and the AI tools that are currently coming on the market. So this has been really like the last quarter has been massive popularization of AI. I myself been playing around a lot with like the OpenAI APIs and just building little weird tools. I'm curious if you see something cool happening in that space, if anything, if you have any opinions on it, because I think it's an interesting space, but obviously wide open and super new.
It's funny. So there is some fantastic AI out there that, will help with content creation, right? And I see that as a very good tool because, content creation is, you look at, and I'll use this as an example. You look at real estate education programs, right? There's really no new information. It's all regurgitated and changed and pivoted on whatever type of personality you are. Can AI do that? Of course they could. They can make it brand new. There's apps that our kids use right now. I hope none of our teachers hear this, but kids, what they do is they literally could take an old paper that someone else wrote and it all jumbles everything and sends it back to them. I'm like, I almost wouldn't have got kicked out of school back in the day if I had that, right? So, it is what it is. It's just part of how things are going. But if I look at the virtual assistant world, will it affect some content creating VAs? Of course it will. But we all have to evolve. I think, it's every industry you got to just like we did back in 2008. Pat and I were ahead of the curve. We got to stay ahead of the curve. As a service provider, I got to stay ahead of the curve. You as a service provider, you got to say, this is fantastic. How can I use AI to help me? So,
yeah, we've been using it for things like I made a little program just with Google Sheets and connecting a Google Ads API and stuff. I was able to pull Google Ads metrics. So just like, here are all your account metrics, and here are the account metrics for the previous 14-day period. And then I'm going to have the AI write like a paragraph or two that explains those metrics in plain English, right? And so things like that, I think it's not so much people getting replaced as it is people are going to be capable of more and more sophisticated things in a much shorter time frame, which I think is just going to be hopefully really awesome. Either that or the end of the world. It could go either way, but I hope it goes the efficient.
I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right. Now let's go totally the other direction. What, if anything, did you bring to your business from your time playing hockey? You are a professional hockey player, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
What, if anything, did you bring / learn from that part of your life into this part of your life?
Yeah, I would say two things. One of them is grit, because business is very similar to professional sports or sports in general. And it's also, we don't always win in this game of business, right? You take a beating, but it's how good you are when you get up, right? You dust yourself off, you get up. There's a lot of takeaways from sports where, you got benched a game, you didn't dress a game, or whatever happened, someone took your spot in the power play, or somebody, you didn't do something and you had to overcome adversity. Same with business. You got to always overcome adversity because, not every day is going to be the same. You may lose a deal. You may lose a client. I may lose a client. I may lose a deal. It's like, back in the day, you think it's the end of the world, but you're like, all right, keep going. I'll add 2. I'll lose 1. I'll add 3. I'll lose 2. It's just, you got to keep going. It's always forward progress. So the takeaway is no matter what, it's never the end of the world, ever. The world keeps going. So does the business. So no matter what, if you get hit, you stumble, you fall down, get up, dust yourself off and keep going. So I think that was, grit in knowing how to overcome adversity, I think are probably the two biggest things.
Yeah, man. I love how you're saying it's like you get 3, you lose 2, you get 2, you lose 1. It's that sort of accretion of marginal gains. That's such a powerful image.
The compound effect now, right? It's like Darren Hardy's book, The Compound Effect.
Yeah.
As long as it compounds on each other, as long as it's compounded in a positive way. You made 2 steps back, but you're still compounding in a positive way.
I love that. I haven't thought about that book in forever. So, one of my very first business coaches mailed that book to me. And I remember
I love it.
Yeah. It's such a simple idea, but it's such a powerful one at the same time. All right. So we've talked about Reva Global. Obviously, the site is at revaglobal.com, REVA global.com. If people are interested in potentially working with you guys or just learning more about the service, should they just go there? What should they do?
Yeah, check out the website. Of course, we have a button on there that's a strategy session. So you can jump on a strategy session or one of our teams. We're also on Instagram. I'm on a bunch of podcasts. So I know Preston's our marketing guy. He's going to start delivering different tidbits of, how individuals use virtual assistants, things like that. So Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and obviously our website.
All right. So we will have links to all that stuff at the show notes for this week's episode, which you can get at adwordsnerds.com/podcast. Bob Lachance from Reva Global, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This was really a fun and fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
That is it. That's it for our interview this week. As always, go over to adwordsnerds.com. If you need help putting together a marketing strategy for your real estate investing business, that is all we do. And it has been all we've done for over a decade now. There is a reason we are still in this space, and it's because, hey, we're pretty good at what we do. If you need help with your online marketing, go over to AdWordsNerds.com and we will help you out. As always, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It means the world to me. I appreciate it. And I will talk to you next week. Cheers.
This is the podcastfactory.com.